Hello and welcome back to DriveDriverDriven, and now what you've all been waiting for, getting back on the Blunicorn project. For a bit of a primer for anyone who's, I guess, subscribed in the last year or so and hasn't watched any of the back catalog of videos or the Blunicorn build itself, in 2017, me and a bunch of friends built an Ultima Evolution. We built the car in about 3.5 to 4 months. In all of 2018, I took it out to a bunch of cars and coffee events. We took it to a bunch of track days. And unfortunately, at the last track day of the year in December of 2018, the engine exploded and the car caught fire. And that was sort of the end of that. Thanks to the fuel cells, the fire didn't spread past the engine bay, and we have enough of a car to rebuild that I filed an insurance claim. It took a long time, but we got paid out to rebuild the car, and then the parts that I ordered were to upgrade that Evolution model to the new RS spec that had been released in the meantime. So this rebuild is, we're going to be taking that Ultima Evolution chassis and we're going to upgrade everything to the new RS spec. And this is one of a handful of chassis in the world that is actually going through this process. Mine doesn't happen to have the best circumstances, but I can think of no better way to rebuild the car than to upgrade what we had. So let's kind of go through the chassis, go through the body and some of the parts, and see where we're at. All right, so it's kind of a tight fit in the garage, but we got everything in here. We had to kick the zero outside under the gazebo, so it's protected for the elements, but the Blunicorn chassis is here, pretty much the state we left it in. It's been kind of tucked back in the garage the whole time. There's still quite a lot to do, but I'll just quickly take you through some of the results up front from the fire, and then we'll work our way back. Up in front, there's still some dirt and debris from the track. We still have some corrosion up in this area from when the battery exploded. We had removed all the carpet and everything from the interior. The seats are just loose in here for now. They still need to be cleaned up, but the seats are basically the only thing in the interior that really didn't mold. I was able to pull them out fast enough and clean them up quick enough that they didn't actually mold. But everything else, the carpet, belts, all that stuff is pretty much ruined. This is pretty much how the chassis looked back in, I want to say maybe November. Actually about this time, maybe 3 years ago. It's kind of in a half-built state. As we work our way back, we can still see, some of the fire retardant down here. Down in this area is where we start to get into the burn affected zone. So this insulation back here, we'll probably have to replace this bit. I'm going to need to pull this tube and clean it up. I think the wrap is okay. I want to just wire brush this pipe, clean it up a bit. And then back in here, there's still some debris back behind this panel. I haven't decided if I want to remove or if I need to remove this rear bulkhead panel or not. I will need to remove all these rivets and everything and do my best to clean this up, and I'll have to remove and replace this heat shield. As you can see, a lot of it's kind of shrunk and wrinkled and everything. Oh, Kumo's kicked his ball under here. That's my helper at work. I think where we last left off is everything was still very dirty and covered in fire retardant from the fire. And I did an okay job at just blasting everything with a pressure washer and trying to scrub these tubes down so they wouldn't corrode further, but they still need to be wire brushed down, treated with like Por 15 or something. And then a lot of these tubes I'm going to cover with this same gold foil. And that's the thing we're going to talk about later when I discuss sort of what worked well with our build and things that can be improved with the build. And a lot of those improvements are going to have to do with heat insulation and heat management in the engine bay. That was sort of my biggest Achilles heel, despite everything that I had done. A couple other parts we're going to need to address is later RS updates. The wing mount actually mounts back here on the chassis. There are gusset plates that get welded in here. I don't have those plates. I'm going to have to make some out of like a 1 inch thick or 1.5 inch wide flat steel or something like that. Basically to reinforce this area, because this will happen. If you can see it better in this angle, but you see how it takes this twist. That happened during one of my track days where I took a very exuberant apex and dipped a rear wheel off the inside of the curb, and it came up with such force it actually bent my shock mount. So we have to straighten this, and then we're going to put that gusset plate over the top, and hopefully that'll prevent this sort of thing from happening in the future. So we still have to do the cleanup work. We're going to have to do a few chassis mods. From here, it doesn't look too bad. You know, we've built this car once. We'll rebuild it faster, better, stronger, etc. And this is just on the chassis side. Let's go and have a look at the body now. This is the RS body. Pardon some of the dirt and water stains. This is from just sitting out in the crate for a couple of months while we were finishing up the Zero. So there are a lot of minor updates. Some big updates too, like these larger Fender Vents, both in the front and the rear, and little things here and there that are different from the Evo body on the first iteration. Of course, you can see it's a little bit darker color. That's something else we couldn't do. I can't remember if I talked about it earlier, but the old body color, the factory couldn't make anymore for a couple different reasons. We couldn't get that same blue. So I worked with Richard and the guys at the factory to get this color, which is a little bit lighter than their lighter blue. And we're calling this Pacific Blue. Can't get it out into the sun at the moment, but it's more of like a true blue, or like a true hue blue. It's very, very blue in the sun. And I'm really happy with how this color turned out. Just like the last body, we're going to have to go through and treat this, paint the underneath. We're going to have to do sound deadening up in the center tub area. We're going to have to protect the wheel wells as much as we can, where rocks, etc., are going to hit underneath in the back of the headlights and then the tail light area. So there's basically all that body work we'll have to do. On top of that, you can see the back of the center tub hasn't been cut out. Of course, none of this body was fit to the chassis at all. That's something that we're going to have to do. Will sort of give us a unique perspective amongst Ultima builders, which is the first go around we had the factory do our body pre-fit. So they have the chassis, they have the body, and then they pre-fit the two together to set your clearances, your door gaps, your panel gaps, and they do all of that work, and then they index everything. When they do that index, it makes it so that when you remove the body from the chassis after shipping and you get it to your garage or wherever, that when you reassemble the car for the final time, all of those panel gaps are set perfectly, all your door gaps are set perfectly, and everything opens and shuts like it should without any kind of interference. It's not a listed option that Ultima has on their spec sheet, but it is something I implore every builder to do. It saves a lot of time for the individuals, the individual builders, all the fiddling and everything else that needs to go to get the doors to align properly, to set your shut lines, to file all your panel gaps. I would say that's the least fun part of the entire build, even less fun than all that riveting in the beginning. So we get to do that. And luckily, they've done a pretty good job at the factory with the new build manual they put together on directing you how they do it. I'm optimistic, cautiously optimistic, that we can get this at least half as good as the factory did. But that's going to be a little bit of an ordeal, and it's going to involve a lot of putting the body on the chassis, removing the body from the chassis, lather, rinse, and repeat. Last but not least, there's some engine updates that we will go over at a later time, where I'm going to address the engine failures and sort of what caused all this business from the beginning. And that has to do with a little bit of the engine and a lot to do with the clutch from the transmission and the clutch that we had in the car originally. It just turned out it was too aggressive. We have a resolution for that. Going over some more parts and some more upgrades. Once again, fuel-safe fuel tanks. These are not sponsored. Paid for them out of pocket because they are amazing. I still have the old ones over there. I'll talk more about those later. And something else I implore every builder to do. We are going to do a power steering upgrade on the chassis. And it's going to be an electric power steering box that'll fit up in this area. There are some other RS upgrades, like a front lift system, which is another must-have for Ultimas. I had even raised mine from the factory height on the front and still had many issues getting up and into driveways or over speed bumps, etc. And my poor splitter just took a beating. Speaking of, there's an RS splitter upgrade, and I'll cover the differences between the front nose on the RS and the Evo and the splitter on the RS and the Evo. What else do we have? There's a whole bunch. We're doing some wiring upgrades. There's going to be an upgrade for this Summit wireless button setup that came with the Evo. That has been updated by the Summit Technologies group, and I can't wait to get that done, which will address one of my gripes that I had with this system, our wiring upgrade, which we're going to switch from a fuse and relay system to a PDM setup. We're going to switch to a Motec PDM. We are going to switch from our fuel injection system from the factory GM E67 ECU to, I think it's a Holley Dominator setup, which has proved to be very robust and very popular with drift and race guys. So I'm hoping that that's not going to have some of the same issues that we found with the GM E67 ECU. However, it will require some more setup ahead of time. One of the upgrades I did not do was the brakes. So we're going to stay with these Evo brakes. These are the AP Racing CP 9200 forged calipers. I didn't see the need to upgrade the brakes. I will probably change the pads out to a more track-focused pad, but otherwise, I actually thought the braking system was okay. It can be improved, and that's something else we're going to look at, is potentially either modifying the pedals or switching the pedals out or switching the master cylinders out to get a better braking feel out of the brake system. It was quite a leg workout to get this car hard on the binders, coming in hot into like T1 at whatever track. It just took a lot of pedal effort to get 1,000 PSI in the lines, and I'd like to reduce that if possible. So yeah, there's not a lot of work. This is, I guess, kind of a recap, but I'm going to get started on the chassis proper now, and let's get this rebuild going.